Hey, you, what are some of the most important albums in your life? This question might bring up some nostalgic feelings from your childhood. Or maybe you think about history-making landmark records. Something like Master of Puppets, Blackwater Park, Heartwork, Slaughter of the Soul. But have any recent albums been that important to you? For me, Rivers of Nihil, the work, is that important. And it's wild for me to think about that it came this late into my life and this recently. And here you might be asking, why is it so important to you? Well, a couple of reasons. Musically, it encapsulated everything I love about music into one single work. It's prog without being nerdy prog. And it's got the acute, distressing emotion of something like Pink Floyd's The Wall, while simultaneously having the weighty punch of modern death metal. But also, inside of that musical magic is a philosophical exploration of life's meaning and the Sisyphean task of work. Basically, that album is me. Whatever's going on inside of my head and my heart, the work is the soundtrack to that. And now the band that made that music is about to release their next record. So when I got my talons on an advanced stream, I dove right in. And while their self-titled next album isn't a big heady concept record like The Work, it should come as no surprise that it's full of philosophical themes, sharp social commentary, and a much more thoughtful message than what you're gonna get from a lot of their death metal peers. And now that I've spoken to Andy from Rivers of Nihil and gotten his thoughts on The Work and their upcoming self-titled record, I have a much more clear insight into the philosophy of Rivers of Nihil. Come with me and find out for yourself. Probably the man with the best beard in all of metal, Andy from Rivers of Nihil. Welcome to Heavy Metal Philosophy.
Hey, thanks for having me, dude.
That's a thrill because The Work is one of my favorite albums of all time and a really important album to me personally because I relate to it. First of all, the music rules, but
right.
I relate to it so much because I'm a workaholic. I can't stop. And that album asks a lot of questions about the nature of work, why we have to work all the time. What does it mean? What is it for? And I ask myself those questions all the time. I go, why are you like this? Why are you working all the time? What is it for? But then I also, when I do think about it, I go, well, what else am I going to do?
Right.
I don't like sitting around idle either. So,
I think like waking up every day and working towards something is probably the most important thing that humans can do. And I think there's this like stigma in the modern world that like work is a bad thing or something that people should be able to avoid and just be taken care of or whatever. And not only is that illusory financially, it's not good spiritually. That's a spiritual poison. Work is like I said, whether it be building a house or practicing guitar or whatever you're doing, waking up every day and having a purpose. That's what work is. Also, I can relate to you on The Work because like that album, I wasn't on that. I don't know if you know that, but like I didn't play on that one. This is my first Rivers album. And when I heard that, I thought, boy, this is about as good as this music that we're trying to play gets. And I knew that I wanted to join that band.
Absolutely. And I like the way you put it, that it's spiritually bad for you. So there's a lot of wisdom in the world that I feel like if you take it too far, it becomes a poison. So,
sure.
For example, one of these wise sayings that we hear all the time is nobody is on their deathbed wishing that they had worked more. But I also
Yeah, I
think
don't know
that,
if that's true.
yeah, I also think nobody's on their deathbed going, I really wish I'd played more video games. You know,
Right.
I,
Right.
and I love playing video games too, but I just, I really doubt that I wish I would have put a few hundred more hours into this game comes across my head when I look back on my life.
Or I really wish I'd have spent, more time talking shit about other people on Facebook.
Right. Yeah. Like, so much accomplished
Go to work.
and so many minds that I changed, right? Talking shit on Twitter or Facebook. Absolutely.
Right. Go to work.
Yeah. Agreed. So I love that album, and I'm super excited about this album too. And after I listened to the work for the first time and then the next 1,000 times, I thought, what are they going to do after this? This is like a magnum opus. And now that I've heard the self-titled album, I think this is exactly what y'all should have done. It's like a reset. It's correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me like it's not a concept album like the work was, even though I do sense a lot of themes that I want to ask you about.
Yeah, I don't think it's expressly a concept album like that. I don't know a ton about the inner workings of the work because like I said, I wasn't there. And the reason that I have, more of a concrete notion about this album or concrete notions about this album is because, I did help create it. I guess it's not probably a concept album as such, but there are definitely some things running through, like you said, that are pretty meaningful.
Yeah. So I saw you guys, I think it's been more than a year now. You were opening for Contortionist, and you played the work in its entirety. And I'm so glad I got to see that show because, like I said, that's such an important album to me. But again, I thought, okay, what are you going to do after this? And now with this record and your previous records, now you can play like a mix of songs. You don't have to play that record all the way through.
Yeah, for sure. And that's definitely a cool thing to be able to do. The work playing that in full live was challenging. The music is challenging, but there's a lot of different guitar tunings and stuff. So we each had to have like 3 guitars. There were a lot of, like, maybe one day's in like this crazy, like, Robert Fripp's new standard tuning. I don't know if you're familiar with that one. It's all fifths, I think. But yeah, so like executing that album live was pretty crazy. So it is cool to be able to pick and choose between the music from, the last 3 or 4 albums, whatever, and kind of just put together a set list of music that people want to hear,
So let's talk about the themes on the self-titled record. So
sure.
I noticed a strong theme of disbelief. So on Suborbital, there's a lyric, do you see it, believe it? Dustman can't believe in what you see. Despair Church, if you contemplate the infinite dream, are you even sure that you exist? Evidence, do you believe everything you read? And then American Death, I can't believe anything you say since the last revolution you tried to fake. Big themes, big revisiting of disbelief in sort of the society we're living in right now.
Right. I mean, I've said it before. I didn't write these lyrics, but I can definitely. I'm very familiar with them at this point, and I have my own kind of thoughts on that. And I think the disbelief that you're talking about might be more of a warning. I don't know. It's tough to say. It's like because I think you reference like Despair Church and stuff, and it's sort of it's a caution against despair, so not necessarily any type of specific faith but having faith, I think that's one of the faith in good, I guess, maybe would be something that I take from that. But I'm not sure exactly what he meant by all those lines.
Well, I could definitely see that interpretation, because another big theme that I see is light. And light, right. The sky, God, angels, and then the album cover has the biblical accurate representation of the angel.
Yeah. And I think that's sort of the general theme of the album is looking for that in your life and trying to cultivate good things as opposed to the stereotypical heavy metal evil Satan thing, because it's just, I don't know. As you get older and you go through life and you experience more and maybe you fall in love, maybe you lose people or things that are close to you. That type of mentality just seems, at least to me, it seems kind of infantile. There's a lot more complexity, and there's like in the end you do lose everything, So I think it's easy to maybe fall into the trap of like, this whole thing is bad, maybe, but it's not, because of all the things you get to experience and all the relationships and love, if you choose to, that you get to have while you're here, And I think the album is looking at that a lot too, because since the work, Biggs has had 2 children. I've gotten married.
Congratulations.
Thank you. A lot has happened that is really like life affirming stuff. So I think the album is maybe more focused on that than, the trap that is everything is bad. Or like you said, disbelief,
Yeah, and there's a lot of talk about how the algorithm feeds negativity, but I just always come back to this idea that, quote, the algorithm is just us. Because yes, the machine, the code, it funnels us things that we engage with, but at the end of the day, we're the ones engaging with them. In the past, before social media, it was the negative headlines that sold newspapers, and it's no different now. If you get online and you say, hey, I just got married, people that care about you will like it and say congratulations.
Right.
But all of your, thousands of followers, they're not going to engage with it. Like if you said something, oh, this is terrible and I despise this thing.
Right. And that's, for example, my algorithm is largely dogs and UFC and, stuff that I like, music, because I choose not to get online and, interact or argue or whatever, but you see a lot of it. That's the reason I deleted Facebook in 2020, I guess. Just I don't want to do this shit anymore. And you know what? Then you have this realization that, or you have this understanding that whoa, that wasn't real at all.
Right.
Once it's not there in your life, you can just go outside and you can go. And I'm not saying that people all across the world don't have problems and they don't need help and there aren't tragedies and there aren't injustices and all this, but you can step outside of your own house and go, today's a beautiful day. And then that's how you can be good to other people is just going, today's a good day. What can I do here to, maybe compliment somebody's hat or shoes or something and just go about your day, as opposed to you go on Instagram or whatever, Twitter. Sure. I've never had a Twitter, but I hear it's bad. You're just bombarded with everything that's wrong with the world. A lot of it that you have no control over. So what are you going to do? Well, you can turn it all off and you can walk outside and say it's a beautiful day outside and maybe enjoy yourself. That's my opinion anyway. I'm sure a lot of people will have issue with that, but that's fine.
Yeah. When I was young, of course, I engaged in a lot of politics online, but
sure.
I don't think I changed anybody's mind. I don't think I convinced anybody.
No.
And,
Absolutely not. In fact, all you can do is polarize further.
right.
You know?
So,
And that's, I mean, we definitely, the world we live in, we don't need any more of that shit.
yeah, it's going on plenty without me, and
Right.
at times I feel bad because like, I don't want to be the guy that's just like, hey, I got a new episode, me, here,
Right.
post about my stuff. But at the same time, when I get on there, I'm like, man, this is bad for me. Like, I
But what are you
don't
doing?
really want to engage with this.
You're talking about heavy metal, man. You're talking about music. Like, there's a lot more destructive things that you could do. And like, yeah, I mean, it's like, if you're not like, and I'm not perfect, man. I have a lot of, I have issues that need dealt with and whatever. But like, if you aren't working to take care of yourself, I think that internet outrage thing is a largely a way for people to distract themselves from what's actually going on with themselves, and that's not healthy either. It's like, if you aren't helping yourself, you can't help other people. So there's a lot of people you see online just outraged for other people, and it's like, well, what's going on in your life? Maybe you should take a look at that. But again, I'm sure that will create outrage if so is what it is.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of that. And I think there's also this deficit that we all feel because we look at the world and it doesn't seem like there's much justice. And,
Right.
and you look at all the things that people accept and you go, where is our righteous fury?
Right.
So for a good example, getting back to the album, American Death and Criminals, like
Sure.
I can feel the righteous fury, especially on American Death, at the world we're observing. Like, this is real injustice and nobody seems to care.
Right. But then at the same time, if you're talking about politicians, and again, name one, it doesn't matter. If you're talking about them, they're playing a game or games that you and I aren't part of. Right? I have no control over who my government bombs or whatever. And it's not that I don't believe in war of any kind, but I don't have control over that. But what I do have, and this is going back to what I was saying, but what I do have control over is my surroundings. And I think if people focused on their surroundings a little more, then we might realize that we all have a lot more in common than we do differences. And then maybe you could have some change. I don't know, though.
So a wise man once said, it doesn't matter who you vote for, you always get John McCain. And,
yeah, the government always gets in.
Yeah, and they're going to bomb whoever they want to bomb. And that's part of what I think about with American Death and our lack of righteous fury. So, for example, not to pick on one side or the other, because to your point and my point, everybody's doing this. Right. So right now there's controversy because a guy used Signal to talk about the war plans. And yeah, that's probably unprofessional and not good. But what's lost in the conversation is they were bombing the shit out of the poorest country in the Middle East. Like, that's what they were talking about on Signal. And nobody's mad about that part. They're mad that he used Signal. And the lack of moral clarity there drives me insane.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what it boils down to for me is like, if, So when I was in college, a professor asked me, like, if I thought it was good that, or he asked the class of like 40 people, young guys and gals, and it was, does anyone think it was wrong to drop the atomic bombs on Japan? And I was the only one that raised my hand and said yes. And he asked me why. Whole class laughed at me. And I said, and it seems pretty obvious, like, if you can justify that being done to someone else, then ultimately you're justifying that being done to you morally, right? But that doesn't change the fact that these people that are running things, they're playing it. It's, what did George Carlin say? It's a big club, and you ain't in it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I could let that ruin my life, and therefore ruin other people's lives in real life or on the internet. Or I can step outside and go, man, it's a beautiful day, or I love my wife, or whatever. It's a choice.
Yeah, I really think that the way to have a better world is if we could somehow have a better framing, then it wouldn't matter so much like the polarization of who gets in versus who doesn't. Because if we frame things like, hey, don't bomb an apartment building to get one guy, that's a different way to frame politics than I don't like this guy. Therefore, the method he used to communicate is what I'm going to get angry about.
It's very far from good on the internet these days. And there's parts of the world where it's very far from good as well. There's parts of the United States that's very far from good, Yeah, and I don't think any of us really have the answer for that.
Yeah. I sense that frustration on the record because Criminals, American Dream, there's another theme that I felt like I was hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's this idea that we all do terrible things, some worse than others. But again, to also try to look towards the light and not be trapped by these terrible things that we've done.
Well, sure. What's that? Alexander Solzhenitsyn or whatever, the guy who wrote the Gulag Archipelagos, or the Gulag Archipelago. He said something to the effect of the line between good and evil is drawn directly down the center of a human heart. Like we are capable of good and bad, and it is a choice. I think that's, I like I said, I can't speak totally for what Biggs was saying on this album, but I can speak to what I take from it. I deliver a lot of the words too, so I have to think about what they mean.
Yeah, you do all those really cool harmonies with the drummer. I love that. I feel like that really sets y'all apart from everybody else. What is that like? So you say Biggs writes all the lyrics, so when y'all get together and put together all the pieces, how do you go, okay, this is the part where I'm going to do those cool harmonies. I'm going to sing this line.
Sure. So we generally get in the studio, and Biggs has a good idea of where he wants the vocal patterns placed. But the melodic aspect of that stuff is generally me, Jared, and our producer Grant, as we figure out what do the melodies need to be. And then, how do we divide up all the vocal labor, especially with the singing parts, is generally the lead clean vocal parts, generally it's going to be me, just because of the character of my voice and stuff. And also Jared has a really hard job playing drums and singing like that. But also, if you hear something really high on the record, vocally, like that's probably Jared. Jared and I have kind of similar voices, but his speaking voice and therefore his singing voice is a little higher than mine. So you can generally tell what's going on there through that.
All right, so we're running out of time, so I'm going to just ask you two more questions.
Sure.
Am I wrong when I feel like the new record is a reset for the band? It seems to me like y'all went, okay, let's go back to the beginning. We'll take some of the prog stuff with us that we learned from the last two records, but back to the beginning, death metal, straight ahead songs.
Well, a couple things. So the band went through and finished the four season concept, right, of the first four records. So that was over. So inherently, I think this album was meant as a reset. Because it kind of had to be. Number 5, the concept's done, or the story's done. What do they do now? Simultaneously, and, not on purpose, the band went through a lot of lineup shift, necessary stuff. And that contributed to it because, all of a sudden we have, we were 5, now we're 4. We have a sax player too, Patty, new sax player. But the lineup is 4, and how do we deliver this stuff, because we don't have a front man anymore. Well, we have a front man, but he's the bass player now, and he has He has his workload cut out for him. How do we figure out how to do this thing? But also, this is the first album that I contributed music to. Even though Brody and I have very similar styles writing-wise, it was going to be a little different there. I think those two factors are kind of the big reason why it feels like a reset. But also, I've said this before too, is we consciously took a lot of influence from the Black Album by Metallica, and that was number 5 for them as well. And we kind of wanted to like really streamline our songwriting with this, and I think for me especially, that's a big thing that I take from the Black Album, because the Black Album, what was before that? That was And Justice for All. You had these 7-8 minute songs that, you know, just kept going, and I love that album. I love And Justice for All, but like, you know, the Black Album was a very conscious effort to trim the fat off, and we did that as well. I think we did it successfully too.
That's kind of crazy, because I had that exact same thought, but I didn't want to say it to you because I didn't want to insult you. I thought like, okay, it feels like you got a first 4 album era very similar to Metallica, and then the Black Album is like a big reset. But
brother,
for a lot of metalheads, that's an insult, you know.
Metallica is my favorite band, dude, and I love the Black Album. And care.
Justice is my favorite record, and I also love the Black Album.
Yeah. I think I would probably agree with you there.
And I also felt like it was a reset because it's the self-titled record. And
yes.
You got the title track at the end, Rivers of Nihil, like flag planted right here, Rivers of Nihil.
Well, I think that was conscious too, in that like we do also feel that the lineup that we have now is the strongest one we've ever had. You know, and I that probably sounds weird coming from the new guy, but I think if you asked anybody in the band, they would well, I know they would agree.
Yeah, so, that's great to hear.
So it's a good time to self-title.
All right, last one. This is an easy one, probably, I hope. Why is Hellbirds not on the record?
So Hellbirds was originally a B-side for The Work. It was written during that time. And I remember when I joined the band, they had the music for that, and it was just kind of like sitting around. Brody had like, it was done musically. And then we were going to go to Europe and play with Lorna Shore, like to do direct support for Lorna Shore in Europe. And that song just felt like a good one to put together and release for that, because it's pretty aggro, you know? And in a lot of ways it's kind of ignorant, but it's super, super fun to play live. You feel like a gorilla playing it live, you know? And, it's cool. But it didn't fit the record. And that's the long and short of it, is it just didn't fit the vibe.
I know you got to get out of here. I really appreciate it. I'm very much looking forward to the record. And it's May 30th.
Yeah.
Self-titled Rivers of Nihil, May 30th. And hopefully I'll be able to catch you guys again in Georgia somewhat soon. But thank you so much, and good luck with the release.
Dude, come out to an Atlanta show soon. We'll have a beer.
I'll definitely be there, man.
All right. Take care, brother. Thank you.
Thank you.